I'm even more disappointed in PTC. I'm even more disappointed now. All right, reacting to a PTC video we never published 5 years ago. Take 0. All right, so 5 years ago, we actually shot a whiteboard video in 2019 sometime. We shot a whiteboard video shortly after the PTC Rockwell partnership had been announced. And in that video, for whatever reason, when I got done shooting it, I told Zach, hey, I don't think I want to post this. And watching it back, I've only seen like the first part of it. Zach said, hey, you should comment on this video. You know, it's appropriate to, you know, with PTC's earnings call that just happened this last week, where they're clearly shifting gears and they're going to focus on PLM and ALM and SLM now that they have a new CEO who comes from ServiceMax. I think it's appropriate for me to, we'll watch the video and then we will, you know, I'll comment it. I'll stop on it and comment it. Let's see how prescient I was with the video itself. Here we go.
Either way, the future of IoT, answers to your questions, this is the second video, take 0.
So the first thing is that's before I started powerlifting. So that's probably like, say 50, 60 pounds ago. That's the first thing I noticed. It's our old whiteboard studio in our old office.
Michael Smith from PTC asked, when PTC does IIoT, have ThingWorx in the black box on your diagram and don't use OPC UA between Kepware and ThingWorx. When we're using Kepware for gathering data for other people's modern non-SCADA IIoT platforms, we typically either use message queues for Kepware to push data to them, or they have some version of field agent to transport our data to their server.
All right, so if you couldn't hear that, Michael Smith from PTC said, you'll remember in the video last month, I basically built out this architecture and I said, here, when we're connecting to an existing OPC UA infrastructure, how do we handle this, all right? And the way that we generally handle it is we have got OPC UA. We will use the IoT gateway, which, by the way, Michael missed in my comments. We don't talk to Ignition over OPC. What we will do is we'll use the IoT gateway inside of Kep server to publish the namespace over MQTT into Ignition to build the tags. We don't actually go into Ignition and build the tags and pull over OPC UA.
That's not entirely true. The one thing I didn't qualify there was that when we're building IIoT infrastructure, so if we're building like a SCADA system or we're building just a standalone manufacturing execution system, we may have an Ignition running on the edge that's connected directly to an OPC server. And the other thing on the Kep server IoT gateway, it had just recently come out. IoT gateway allowed you to configure Kepware to select tags to publish in a JSON, and then you would transmit them into the broker, and then on the client side you would just parse them into a UNS, and it actually worked really elegantly.
We use the IoT gateway to do that. So it's pub sub, and we publish, and what Kep server does is just publish the updates to us to Ignition. So we generally have Ignition here, and then Ignition will be essentially the data layer to MES, ERP, etc. But oftentimes we'll have MES inside of Ignition. Sometimes the ERP system will be inside Ignition, and sometimes where WMS will be in here. Okay, but most of the time they're out here. Okay, and what he was saying is, hey, we use ThingWorx in the black box and not Ignition. And I don't know if he asked us, hey, do you ever use ThingWorx as the black box? The answer is yes, sometimes we do. We were original beta testers for ThingWorx prior to the PTC acquisition of Kepware. We were also beta testers of manufacturing apps, which was a ThingWorx solution that came out, which manufacturing apps was originally supposed to be ThingWorx's MES solution. And we beta tested that as well. And we just, at the end of the day, while we love ThingWorx, we do, there's a couple of things that have happened that have steered us away from ThingWorx. Okay, we've done several ThingWorx implementations. For the most part, we use ThingWorx just for dashboarding. Okay, we don't really use it as a data layer. I don't know why anyone would. It's going to cost you way too much money. If you were to compare a ThingWorx solution to what we're capable of doing inside of Ignition or Factory Studio, you're never going to win the bid against us. I mean,
and the things that are revealed that I was learning at that time was a lot of pricing stuff and a lot of undelivered promises from ThingWorx. So ThingWorx had a ton of potential, but it was really, really hyper-focused on this. You know, the thing was the center of the universe. And that would be like the equivalent of, imagine in Ignition, if you didn't build a user-defined data type, you basically you'd have to build everything custom. You'd really struggle with being able to, acquire data, store event values, and visualize those in a UI layer. Imagine if in Ignition, if you were compelled to use user-defined data types. That was one of the things that was becoming glaring, was that the thing in ThingWorx, the thing object in ThingWorx was the center of the universe. It was very IT driven. And so we started realizing that we were really being limited to dashboarding, because so much of what we needed to do, we'd have to do in custom scripting.
We're going to be half the cost of the ThingWorx solution, because the engineering is just so labor intensive to develop most of the solutions that you need, that the consumer is asking for. Okay, but ThingWorx is a really powerful dashboarding solution. Outside of dashboarding, you're just not going to be able to. It doesn't mean that you can't build amazing things in ThingWorx. You can, but it still costs too much to do it.
And that holds true today. ThingWorx is a great dashboarding platform. It still costs too much.
You'll never be able to compete with the Ignition or the Factory Studio developer, because they can develop it in a third the time for a third the cost. And so ThingWorx is always going to end up losing in the comparison. All right. So let me explain what Michael Smith was saying.
And let me follow up on that piece. Ultimately, that's probably what's happened over time. That if they weren't able to sell ThingWorx in the boardroom, they weren't selling it. They'd have to sell it in the boardroom. Take 18 to 24 months to figure out total cost of ownership is too high and time to value is too long. And with platforms like with Ignition out there, or Factory Studio, or WinCCOA, with the other option, and then Tulip, like right in their own backyard, and then Tulip, launches, and as an operations platform, the time to value with Tulip is pretty crazy out on the edge. It's pretty hard for PTC to compete.
What Michael Smith is saying,
and he's a PTC
architect. So Michael Smith is a PTC architect. Okay, so what he's saying is, let's go ahead and put ThingWorx in place of Ignition. Okay, and we're building this IIoT project. And then what he's doing is he's saying, we're going to go ahead and use message queues. Okay, so think MQTT between Kepware and ThingWorx. When PTC made the acquisition of Kepware, what they did was they have seamlessly integrated ThingWorx with KepServer. So KepServer may as well, for all intents and purposes, live inside the ThingWorx solution. Okay,
this is one of the promises they didn't deliver on, right here. The fact that they didn't completely natively integrate. They dabbled, then they pivoted to Kepware Plus. And then they really just kind of let Kepware do what they want, which is probably the best thing to do, because there's a lot of smart people over at the Kepware place. But what I'm about to draw here is what the vision was for Kepware and ThingWorx, and they never delivered on it.
In this case, it doesn't. He's just going to use message queues to communicate everything natively that lives inside of Kepware into ThingWorx. Okay, and then what they're going to do is they're going to use some prepackaged solutions, like manufacturing apps, which I think they call, I don't even know what they call it now. They don't call it manufacturing apps, but it was originally like plant performance module, and there was like 3 different modules. The problem was like on the MES side, you couldn't create custom states. So like I could only use the states that were predefined inside of manufacturing apps, that kind of thing. So ThingWorx as a platform for solving problems, it's still too rigid. Well, I don't want to say it's rigid. You can build anything inside of ThingWorx, but you got to do way too much scripting. It's too labor intensive. It would be like building it in Visual Studio. So much of it's like building it in Visual Studio, which I'm going to wipe the floor with you if I'm building it in Ignition, because Ignition already has so many tools built into the palette. Factory Studio already has so many tools built into the palette where we can drop those tools onto a screen and then connect them through very quick Python scripts, or through relaying through a data source, or relaying it back through an MQTT broker, or relaying it through a web service. I mean, like, we can do things in a day that you can't do in ThingWorx in a week.
And that's because of ThingWorx reliance on the thing object as the center of the universe. Also, they never delivered on the manufacturing apps, the functional extensions of the ThingWorx platform. They never delivered on those things either. I mean, this is when I was talking about how it languished over the last. This is 5 years ago. This video, when I talk about how it languished, this is, you know, I'm not sure why we never published this video, but it is a video we shot and we never published, and now I'm commenting on it. But it looks like, you know, you can see the things that ThingWorx was supposed to deliver on, they clearly didn't deliver on.
And so it's not that you can't do it in ThingWorx and that it's not a great solution. It's just when you compare it to the other solutions we have in the market, there's no comparison, okay? So that's the first part.
So it sounds like he was right. But
He's correct in that, exactly. The architecture he described was correct. He did misunderstand what we said. We do not talk to Kepware over OPC UA most of the time. Most of the time we're using the IoT Gateway plugin inside of Kepware to publish data from Kepware into Ignition, into our namespace. So
for IIoT solutions.
the innovation suite that you see from Rockwell is literally ThingWorx with a Rockwell logo on it. That's all it is. And what that tells me is, since Rockwell has spent $1 billion, has given $1 billion to PTC, that buys you a lot of influence over the direction of PTC's offerings. And Rockwell has never gone in the direction of open. And so that tells me that ThingWorx and PTC is not going to go in the direction of open. They're going to go in the direction of more closed. And here's my argument.
And I was right.
For that. After the Kepware acquisition, Kepware has rebuffed many buyouts. I've been working with Kepware solutions since like 2000. I cut my teeth in the Northeast. I was working with Kepware solutions when the only installs of Kepware were like in New York State, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. That's how long I've been working with Kepware, okay? They have rebuffed lots of buyout requests. When PTC came along and bought Kepware, I had a chance to go meet with their team, and one of the things that I learned right away, I could tell right away that what PTC's plan was, they wanted Kepware's brain power to take ThingWorx all the way to the edge. Okay? So ThingWorx had been nothing more than a software platform that you could build stuff. Think Visual Studio, and it could talk most standard commercial protocols, but it really couldn't talk industrial. So they bought Kepware so that it could. Okay? And so what they did was they originally bought Kepware where I would be connected to all my equipment, you know what I mean, poll response. But their plan all along had been to natively embed Kepware here inside of ThingWorx, and then put Kepware out on the edge and make these connections. So the edge, this is a PLC or an RTU, whatever. And that's exactly what they've done.
So now imagine they had delivered on this. Imagine they had delivered by integrating Kepware into the platform itself so that the platform could go to the edge. And, you know, Rick Bellotta made a comment, I think on a LinkedIn post. He was like, imagine ThingWorx and Kepware. If you had fully leveraged the power of both, you would have literally had, you know, a perfect platform for unified namespace development. And the truth is, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but damn, it would have been fucking crazy. It would have been, you know, incredibly powerful. I think what we would have missed, would have been missing, is the data ops component, the data ops layer. Although things, you can do data ops in things, but not to the level that, say, like HiByte can. But they didn't deliver on this. This part here, I mean, the reason they did the Kepware acquisition was to do this, and they just didn't. and the platform just languished. And by the way, these are promises they made.
ThingWorx Edge is Kepware. It's Kep servers, Modbus, Allen Bradley, and I think Siemens driver is included in it now. Rewritten for Linux, because Kepware was originally written just in pure .NET, was rewritten in Linux, the driver technology, so that it can be installed on a small Linux PC and put out on the edge. But why did they do that? They did that so that you can connect Kepware here to connect Kepware here, which is natively integrated in the ThingWorx solution. But that's...
What's crazy is they pivoted a couple years in, and they went to the Kepware Plus, which Kepware Plus is essentially a centralized management hub for your Kep server instances out on the edge. I'm not really sure why they did that. Probably there was some request from clients for it, and you know, I'm in the Henry Ford, I'm in the Henry Ford school of the end user. That is, if we had asked the consumer what they wanted pre-automobile, they would have said a faster horse. They wouldn't have said a car. And it's our job as consultants, it's our jobs as subject matter experts to take the client's problems and convert it into their solution, not necessarily ask the customer what solution they want. It's our job to quantify, qualify, and quantify the problem, and then articulate a solution. And PTC every step of the way over the last 5 years is it's one misstep after another.
Still doesn't change the fact that developing the overall enterprise solution for the customer costs 3 times as much in engineering as it does in comparable platforms like Ignition and Wonderware. And so what's important to me is that I can still talk to this once I install Kepware Edge, ThingWorx Edge. It's important to me that Kepware is going to talk as easily to Ignition and Factory Studio as it will native ThingWorx, which it will. But my concern is that it may not. And the reason why is because there are a lot of products that Rockwell comes out with that they put out on the edge that plays much better with a Rockwell solution than it does with another off-the-shelf solution. And that is by design, to get you to buy the Rockwell solution.
So what is your advice to ThingWorx or PTC and Kepware then?
I think PTC is an outstanding company. I think ThingWorx is an amazing solution. What I'm telling you here is based on our experience developing ThingWorx, developing with Ignition, developing with Factory Studio.
It was the first warning. This was really my first inclination there might be a problem. And I'll be honest, when I shot this video, I didn't think that, I believed PTC was going to deliver on some of the promises. Not all, I never assume I never think anyone's going to deliver on all the promises. But I'm shocked at, honestly, Zach would love to use that as a thumbnail. He always uses stuff like that. But this is the first sign, the first inkling. 2019 is when we kind of knew it was starting to go in the wrong direction, and this was the call to action.
It takes much longer to develop in ThingWorx than it does a comparable solution in Ignition, and the fact that PTC owns Kepware isn't argument enough to use ThingWorx as that platform. We use ThingWorx as a dashboarding solution. Here's another issue. My advice to PTC on ThingWorx: get your pricing down. Right now, nobody within PTC knows how much ThingWorx costs. It's like as if the ThingWorx cost is totally dependent upon the application. I mean, we've worked with it with a half dozen different clients in the last year, and each client is paying. I mean, it's as if it was like whoever negotiated the best price.
And this problem never went away. In fact, in the podcast on Friday, I said the same thing. 5 years, 5 years, and and now the more I think about it, I think I was beyond fair on Friday, being hard on PTC. And the simple fact of the matter is that when poor leadership drives an organization off a cliff, they should, at a minimum, they should take the heat. You know what I mean? But at a maximum, they should engage. They should engage, and they should look for a solution. And I think it's clear that PTC is pivoting their business model. They're going to focus on PLM. They're going to focus on ALM. They're going to focus on service software, managing field service, and I think that it's clear that they're moving away from manufacturing solutions. It's clear that that's what they're doing. The IIoT is obviously they're pivoting, and the reason why is because they've fallen way behind.
There's nothing published or open about the pricing, nothing transparent. So that's how you know. At the end of the day, whether you succeed or fail is not going to be based on how well you leverage your install base. It's going to be how well your solutions service your customers. Amazon kicks everyone's ass for 2 reasons. Number one, their commitment to technology, leveraging technology. And number two, Jeff Bezos cares about one thing and one thing only: the customer experience. That's it. If we are not giving the customer the absolute best experience, then they're going to go somewhere else eventually. The people at ThingWorx, the people at Kepware especially, are a phenomenal people. They make the best product. I mean, their products are phenomenal. I don't disagree with, it was a Michael Smith, is his name? I don't disagree with Michael that in his architecture at all. What I'm saying is we wouldn't make that choice because it would cost too much to engineer in ThingWorx relative to engineering it in Ignition. He uses ThingWorx because he works for PTC. Right. Using Ignition is not an option, but if he was in my place, he'd probably pick Ignition. Actually, I know he would. Anyway, that's the answer to the second question, and thanks for watching.
So I mean, slate it there. I mean, it's everything in there is held true. Actually, it's I only watched the first minute before we did this. Before I did this reaction video, and number one, we should have published the video 5 years ago. I have no idea why we didn't. Well, it was my decision. I know that. They told me. I'm the one who said don't publish it. And number two, I'm even more disappointed in PTC. I'm even more disappointed now. It's a shame. But hey, it's not the first time. Certainly won't be the last. Comment down below what you think about that. And actually, interesting thought. Never thought about this before, but would you want me to watch back some of the old videos and do these reactions and give kind of a updated, break it down and give some updated context, how things have changed since we shot those original videos? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and we will see you in the next one.